Again, if this is what it took to get to the truth, I was ready and willing to play the game. But it wasn't a game. God really did allow that little 2-year-old girl to come forward and tell her story. I saw and felt the memory like I was living it for the very first time. I was with Uncle John. He was the husband of my mom's sister. My grandma lived on a farm, and Uncle John was more or less a hired hand. I saw Uncle John walking me into a basement cellar. He walked down a narrow cement staircase, and it was musty and old and damp down there. I was not prepared for what happened next. He threw me on the top of the table and lifted up my pretty little dress. I started screaming and crying and fighting back. He grabbed an old bottle off a nearby shelf and smashed it against my forehead. "Shut up," he demanded, as he started undoing my pants. When I came out of this memory, my head hurt, my heart was pounding, and I became aware that I was screaming while sitting on a couch. That reality of that memory was so fresh that I had to look at my body and remind myself that I was a grown-up woman, not a 2-year-old child. What had just happened? Had I really just relived a memory to the extent that it felt like it happened yesterday? The answer is yes. I apparently did relive this event, and from my counselor I learned that these memories are called body memories. Our brains are such amazing creations of God, and it shouldn't be surprising that God sometimes allows us to store trauma in a special place in the back of our brain until we are ready to cope with it. We know this is to be true in people who were traumatized in the war. It was a common problem for many soldiers who suffered and saw traumatic events. So I could process this psychological truth about lost memory without too much doubt. After all, I also knew what I had just experienced, and it was very real to me. In the weeks to follow, God kept showing me visions of trauma people. I would see them first in snapshot forms. For instance, I would see a little girl hiding under a pile of dirty clothes in a laundry room. That vision would haunt me for a week or so. Then I would confess it to Rita, so she would again ask permission for that little girl to come forth and tell us what happened. That is when I would relive the whole scene. From the laundry room snapshot picture, I received a full memory of my dad furious with me, and he was yelling at me in the laundry room of our old house. He called me dirty laundry, and he was pushing me around and yelling. He started taking off his belt, and I knew what he meant from the incident with Uncle John. So again I started screaming, and my heart started pounding in my chest. I felt my back being pushed into the concrete floor by the force of his body, and I yelled, "It hurts! It hurts! Stop! Stop!" Dirty laundry was put over my face to muffle the screams, and at least I couldn't see anything as my dad continued to rape me. It was extremely hard to process these memories because I swear I did not remember them until then. I knew my dad had some anger issues, but I had thought I was Daddy's little girl, his favorite. We were close. We played tennis every day. This was so confusing. What was happening? Was I crazy? Rita assured me that I wasn't, and one day she handed me a book. She said it made sense to her, and she wanted me to consider the possibility that I could have had multiple identities. I looked at the cover of this book, and it read, "Multiple Identities, Understanding and Supporting the Severely Abused." What? Huh? Are you telling me? I thought. I was prepared for a breakthrough. But let's back up a little bit here. This is bordering on some kind of freak show, and I'm not signing up to be the main attraction. All I could think of was the movie Sybil with my face on the screen. "Okay, get a grip, Sharon," I said to myself. I knew I needed to listen to Rita, whom I had grown to trust. She went on to explain to me that they had renamed multiple personalities to what is now referred to as dissociative identity disorder, DID. Okay, that sounds better. I guess so. Go ahead, I thought. I am willing to hear what this is. So I rather reluctantly gave her permission to speak about the reality of this disorder in my life. What she said, I have to admit, made sense. She explained that DID is not a mental illness or a medical condition. Instead, DID is a God-given coping technique given to small children to provide an immediate escape from an intolerable trauma. Wow, really? Now that made sense. Of course I couldn't handle that reality at the age 3. My dad, mom, grandma, and uncle were not safe people. They were, after all, my caregivers, people I trusted. How could I reconcile in my small brain that people who were supposed to be good were really evil? My brain was not developed enough to cope with that dilemma. In fact, that is why experts think that only children under the age of 7 can disassociate. If they are older than 7, their brains have the capacity to register the trauma in a healthier fashion. Because I was 3 and couldn't understand that situation, God did give me the ability to disassociate myself from the bad. I was able to hide completely and remove my true self from the immediate trauma by creating another person to come forward to take the abuse. These disassociated parts of me essentially became my heroes because they guarded my true heart from the abuser. How ingenious, how magnificent, how God so in my early years, DID was a benefit to me and helped me get through an intolerable childhood, whereas without it I might have gone completely insane or even committed suicide. The whole idea of DID took a while to set in, but it certainly sounded like truth to me.